What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the Off the Bench Podcast Network. It is Tuesday, November 24th, 2020, folks. We are less than 24 hours away from college basketball season tipping off. Of all the sports last season, everyone got to finish, everyone got to crown a champion. College basketball did not. And with all due respect to some of the other sports, I know they didn't either. But in terms of what's on the American consciousness, we are ready to fill out brackets. Darn it, we didn't do it last year. But we are here to get you ready for this season's hopeful all the way full season completion into March Madness. I can't do it without my co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. Fantastic college basketball mind. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Now, right now, if you're watching us and not just listening, but if you're watching, you're probably looking into your computer saying, is that the two good looking guys that talk horse racing? Yes, it is. It's us. Now we're going to talk basketball.
Yes. And we recording right after the fact too, so don't think that we're wearing the same clothes multiple days. No, back-to-back pods recording today. And obviously when you think Thanksgiving, first and foremost you're going to think football because that's what it is. But second should be, at least sporting wise, should be college basketball. Thanksgiving is very big. Usually the week of Thanksgiving, we're kind of in the flow of things, not 10 games deep, but some of these teams have 2 or 3 games deep. We're starting to see, I know the Diamond Head Classic, I think, would always go off on Thanksgiving. I know the Maui Invitationals around that time. Obviously, things have changed. Not going to see the 200 preseason tournaments that we normally see, but college basketball will return tomorrow. And let's just get you ready. Excuse me. Going through, first we'll do the AP top 10. There's a lot of similarities, but we'll do AP top 10 heading into the 2020 season. It is number 1 Gonzaga, number 2 Baylor, number 3 Villanova, number 4 Virginia, number 5 Iowa, 6 Kansas, 7 Wisconsin, 8 Illinois, 9 Duke, and 10 Kentucky. Moving on to the coaches, pretty much the same teams, just in different orders. You're going to have Baylor at number 1, Gonzaga number 2, Villanova and Virginia are both at 3 and 4, respectively. Kansas at 5, Iowa at 6, Wisconsin at 7, as it is also in the AP. And then Duke is 8, Kentucky is 9, Illinois number 10. Obviously, like you said, the same 10 teams in those two rankings, just a little different. Obviously, most notably is the 1 and 2 Baylor and Gonzaga, depending on which poll you look at. That's who is, 1 and 2. Obviously, when you think of preseason rankings, this isn't the BCS. This isn't only 4 teams making it, blah, blah, blah. Preseason rankings don't really matter. It's obviously you feel good if you're a top 10 team. But if you're unranked right now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to win a national championship. It's not like that. Sometimes it is like that in football. Not like that for basketball. What are your thoughts just kind of looking over the top 10? Anything that jumps out to you from those 10 teams, maybe spread a little differently?
Yeah, well, right off the bat, and the fans and the listeners will get to learn that for going on 20 plus years, I am a big Gonzaga Bulldog fan by virtue of my son, the proud alum from Gonzaga, and my daughter-in-law, the proud alum from Gonzaga. They happened to be freshmen in 1998. And my son calls me in October and says, you might want to watch this basketball team. They're saying around campus that they're pretty good. They might make the tournament. And that was the year that they made the great run, the Cinderella run to the Elite Eight, where they dropped it to eventual winners of the whole thing, Connecticut that year. So I am always following Gonzaga. It's so exciting to see them at number 1. But what I don't like about that is there's only one place, only one direction to go when they rank you number 1 and you start the season with the big target on your back. Everybody wants a shot at number 1. Everybody wants to be that team that says, see, they didn't deserve to be there if you beat them early in the season, or they're not that good, they don't deserve to be there. So, but I do love seeing Gonzaga 1 or 2. Either way, Baylor is constantly, they have become such a consistent powerhouse in NCAA basketball. Uh, the one that surprises me to not see in the top 10, kind of just because it's that mental thing, muscle memory, your mind is used when these things roll out to see certain names. Well, where's Michigan State? How is Coach Izzo not in the top 10? Well, Coach Izzo isn't too far down out of the top 10. I think he's 12 or 13, something like that. And of course, you see Krzyzewski in there. Coach K's got his boys up there at 9 and 8, depending on what you look at. Um, Kansas, who we'll be talking about in a little more depth as we go through this podcast, it's going to be an interesting year for them. They've got some challenges on ahead of them, not only on the offensive side of the game, but off the court too, with some sanctions that are just looming overhead, and they've been looming out there. And I don't understand what takes the NCAA so long to make decisions. You know, it either is or it isn't. But you know, I almost feel like if we look far enough into who's doing all this electoral nonsense that's been taking place with the presidential election, you're going to find guys that are also on the NCAA committees that are you know, doing the decision making. But in the top 10, no, I think it's going to be a great season, and I'm just looking forward to it getting underway. You're going to talk about the schedule, but these top 10 teams, between tomorrow morning and the end of the day on Sunday, you're going to see 17 contests featuring top 10 teams.
That's awesome. And obviously needed for college basketball, like I said, took a huge hit not being able to run March Madness. And just going back to Gonzaga, I think it might have been that year, maybe the year after. But I do remember going to my first ever USD game, the University of San Diego, from where I sit to where
At the old gym?
Yes, I don't remember what I mean, it was standing room only. I feel like my high school gym might have been bigger than that thing. And they were playing a team, it was standing room only. Gonzaga was very highly ranked, or maybe not highly ranked, but very highly thought of, at least in the small pocket of the West Coast Conference. And I'll never forget watching Dan Dickow just absolutely just shoot the lights out of the place. He was such a fantastic shooter. And then my dad would follow his career. He wasn't even a basketball fan, but he followed Dan Dickow from, I think he was on the Hawks at one point, or, you know, oh, he only played 4 minutes, but it's just like, Dad, come on. I don't care, but he's always looking through those box scores. So whenever I hear Gonzaga, that's of course the one thing I think of is Dan Dickow. And obviously there've been plenty more, Adam Morrison, Rui Hachimura, plenty of guys who've come through, but Dan Dickow, at least for me, was the first one. I think it was John Stockton too, was the OG, if you really want to get rolling with it. But Gonzaga at number 1 or number 2, however you look at it, a lot of pressure on that team. We'll see if they can finally get to that elusive Final Four that I think we all want to see them at. Now going through Wednesday's schedule, at least the top 10 calendar, we have a few games, at least in the top 10. We got Maine going to number 4, Virginia, NCAA at number 8, Illinois, North Carolina Central at number 5, Iowa, Morehead State at Kentucky. One that really kind of jumps out to me is Villanova on the road at Boston College. Boston College, they always, I mean, they're not going to be the dominant team, but they always have some players. I always go back to Jared Dudley, a San Diego kid, going all the way out there to Boston. And the one game that's going to be very near and dear to our heart here in Southern California is number 22 UCLA at San Diego State. They finally got the Bruins to come down to Viejas. They had to, you know, do it in a pandemic year, but they finally get those teams, or UCLA, down. Looking ahead to Thursday, you do have Chicago State at Illinois. Illinois will actually play 3 games in 3 days. So keep an eye on that. But the big one on Thursday is number 1 Gonzaga at number 6 Kansas. Keep an eye there. Kansas will have another showdown with a school that is actually very near and dear to my heart as well. Bringing my dad up again, is my dad was actually born in St. Joseph's University Hospital. Oh. So Yeah, St.
Very
Joe's,
cool.
yeah. I remember the year Phil Martelli had them. I think they were undefeated. I want to say Delonte West was on that team. I could be, but I think it was Phil Martelli's team. I remember when they were going making their run. My dad absolutely loved it. But for Friday, Gonzaga gets a big test when they face at Auburn. Or I'm sorry, they host Auburn. Ohio will be at number 8 Illinois. Kansas, as I said, at St. Joseph's. Southern will be at Iowa, number 5 Iowa. Detroit at number 10 Kentucky. Arkansas Pine Bluff heads to number 7 Wisconsin. And a couple ones on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, you got Duke hosting Coppin State. And then Sunday, we have Richmond at Kentucky and number 2 Baylor at Seton Hall. Keep an eye on that game. I think that's going to be a real good one. Interested to see what Seton Hall can do this year. Last year, I focused heavily on the Big East. Seton Hall was one of the more up and down teams in the country. I was very excited to see what they do in the tournament. Obviously, didn't get that chance. I go back to the Wednesday, tomorrow's games being UCLA at San Diego State. This is really, I mean, the other games there's bigger name colleges going off. Who knows? Maybe Villanova, Boston College, maybe has more of an East Coast flair, but UCLA at San Diego State, I think is going to be the most competitive game of the night tomorrow night. Don't know a ton about UCLA. I mean, obviously they have Mick Cronin coming in. I think he's really gonna step things up for that program. He's not a Steve Alford. He's not going to be bending over backwards for these players. He's going to bring the right kids in. We'll see how that goes. But for San Diego State, without a doubt, their biggest concern or their biggest um, task has to be how do you fill in the gap that Malachi Flynn left? Malachi Flynn drafted number 29 overall by the Toronto Raptors. Had a chance to come back to college, didn't do it. It's all good. I don't blame him for it. Go get your money. You can go back to school anytime. For San Diego State, I have 5 players that I'm watching or looking for to try and step up. And one of them is Arek Arap, who's got pushed into that 6-man role probably a little earlier than he wanted to last year. Hopefully that helps him. I think this year he'll be more of a seasoned 6th man. Trey Pulliam, another kid that needs to get his jump shot, be a little more consistent with that. Matt Mitchell, he flirted with going to the NBA. I love it. I love his game. I don't know if it really translates to the next level. He is a blue collar player. There's no doubt about it. 8 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, 3 blocks, and throw in a whatever stat you want to talk about as well. He will fill up the stat sheet. A kid that I'm looking forward to really be a big scorer for San Diego State is Jordan Shackle, another kid last year that was very, very inconsistent and relied on Malachi Flynn being the bell cow. He relied on that way too much. He needs to be the main guy. And for the number 1 player I think that I'm watching for San Diego State is Nathan Mensah. He was a kid who last year, 6'10", brings a different attitude to this team. San Diego State always has kind of been missing that big man mentality. Even Yanni Wetzel last year was a big kid, but not a big body. Mensah is, if he can stay healthy, he had some heart issues last year. If he can get that under control, I think San Diego State can really do some things this year. Of all the teams, I don't want to discount any student athlete that played college ball last year, but I really do feel like San Diego State really has to feel hard done by what happened. I mean, they walk off the court. I believe it was the Saturday night before the whole thing happened Wednesday, thinking, okay, yeah, we lost, but you know what? We're going to get a chance to play for a national championship. And it obviously never happened. So I think San Diego State really has something to prove. Definitely teams that I'm focusing on. I will say, going back to the top 10, I am interested to see what will come from Villanova. They lose one of their best players in Sadiq Bey. Me being a Philadelphia kid, I follow all the Big 5 schools. St. Joe's is, of course, one of those. You have LaSalle, Penn, and, of course, Villanova as well. There's another one, Temple. And For me, Villanova has always kind of been my East Coast school. I'm interested to see what type of talent and what type of discipline Jay Wright brings in. If Jay Wright has a consistent team, they will win the national championship. It's when they get inconsistent, that's when you don't win a national title. I know that's easy to say from here, but that's been their biggest problem. So them being ranked number 3 preseason after losing a guy like Sadiq Bey gives me definite hope for that. But I know Raider Jim, you have something to talk about with some of the other top 10 teams.
Yeah, primarily I'm focusing on after looking at the schedule, all the top 10 guys are playing. As we said, 17 games over 5 days that'll feature top 10 teams. Unlike many Thanksgiving weeks, the kickoff weeks where you had the tournaments, where you could see top 25 teams line up against one another if they continued to advance through whatever tournament they were in. And, if somebody takes out Chaminade and they get to advance to the next game in the Maui Classic, they're not really doing those formats this year, which is why we already know that Illinois is not only going to play 3 days in a row, we already know who those opponents are. So the only game that is going to be out there over those first 5 days where you're going to get to see 2 top 10 teams face each other is the pre-scheduled Gonzaga game, where they are going to be taking on Kansas. And they're going to be going to Florida. They're actually playing this game in Florida. So there's been already, the issues and the concerns with everybody's well-being. Thankfully, one of the blurbs I was reading earlier in the day said that coaches Self and Few were texting one another over the weekend, just basically giving a thumbs up to each other. All's clear over here on the health front. How about you? We're good. So far, so good. And so both have boarded their planes. Both are in Florida by now. And let's just keep our fingers crossed that everything holds well and nobody gets sick, which I'll talk about that again after I talk a little bit about the game. But number 6, Kansas Jayhawks against the number 1 opening season, number 1 Gonzaga Bulldogs. Both of them, great resumes, perennial successes and presence in March Madness over the last, couple decades, obviously. Here's what separates the two when you look at the resumes. Kansas has got 5 national titles. 2 of those were even before there was a March Madness tournament. They won some of the early ones. But it's been a while since they've actually won the national championship. 12 years since they got their last national title. 8 years since they played in their last national championship game, which is not to take anything away from that program. But like, so many fans, all the Kansas fans and the Kansas players and coaches are saying, but last year, that was their team. They were going to come back. They were going to be in the Final Four, march through that. They were going to end up in the national championship game and win it all. They had the team to do that. They certainly did. So what's going to be different this year? Well, big thing is for Kansas is they lost Devin Dotson and Udoka Azubuike. Between the two of them, they averaged 32 points a game, which is a lot of offense. And that's where Coach Self is going to have to step back. Does he have the right pieces that can come in and make up those 32 points? He's got Christian Braun, great guard, great shooting guard. He's also got Mitch Lightfoot and Bryce Thompson as his 6th men, if you will. He's got Marcus Garrett, Okai Agbaji, and David McCormick. They've got depth, but it's going to be on the defensive side of the ball that they're going to also be a little challenged, and not so much challenged, but they're going to have to prove themselves, especially against a team like Gonzaga, who's going to be a little stronger on the inside than people think. And I think they're going to be just as consistent as they usually are from the outside. Gonzaga just brings that all-around game. The one thing that, as I alluded to earlier, the other thing that Kansas is dealing with is they do have that elephant in the room, if you will. They've got sanctions that they could be looking at. And if who knows when the NCAA will decide to make a ruling, but if they decide to do it during this preseason and before the real season starts, these kids could be looking at, well, you can't play in the tournament if there is one. And it's not fair to the kids, but the coaching staff and Coach Self, it's up to them to make sure that they stay focused on what's going on the wood, in the paint, play your game, and don't let us deal with the rest of it. Kind of like, like parents do with their kids. Don't worry about what's going on with mom and dad or any of that. You focus on school. We're going to make everything good around here for you. So the coaching staff, best of luck to Kansas. They got a good program. And we'll just see what happens with those NCAA sanctions, and it'll be a good test for both teams, and especially for the Gonzaga Bulldogs, who again, you start the season at number one, only one way to go from there. They finished the season last year 31 wins and 2 losses. And back in 1998, Dan Munson was the coach of the Gonzaga Bulldogs. He took them to the final, to the Elite Eight, where they lost to Connecticut. And then he took a bigger offer, and he decided he was going to go coach the Golden Gophers in Minnesota. And that opened the door for a guy named Mark Few. The big man for Gonzaga at that time was a guy named Casey Calvary. Casey Calvary got to be known for maybe once or twice during a season. He would not only jam the ball, but he'd hang a little bit, and he shattered a couple backboards in his day, which got to be a real showstopper and put more eyes on Gonzaga. It's like, who are these guys with this big kid in the middle? And they asked Casey Calvary, well, wow, now that Coach Munson's gone and Coach Few stepping in, how's that going to affect you guys? And his answer was to the effect, well, I don't ever remember Coach Munson being on the floor with us. And that was their approach. That was their approach then, and they have allowed Mark Few to do his thing. And what has Mark Few done in his 21-year run as the head coach of Gonzaga? 599 wins, 124 losses, a winning percentage of 828. Look at Coach Self, look at Mike Krzyzewski, look at Roy Williams, look at the big names out there, and you cannot discount or leave out Mark Few. And he is just a generally good man. He's a very good man, runs a tight program. They do some of the best recruiting, international recruiting you're ever going to see. And they've signed some big names. Now they were also picked. These are the guys that are going to win. They're going to get their first national championship. They've only been to the game once, 2017, where they lost to North Carolina, but they did make it. They've been into the Sweet 16 repeated times. And last year, everybody thought that they were poised to make their big run for their first national title. It wasn't to be. And like every team, COVID came along, stopped the season, and it also shifted the lives of so many young college athletes. So Gonzaga lost some of their guys. They lost Killian Tilly, the hotshot kid from France, who fought injury throughout his last year, but he was ready to go for the final or for the March Madness tournament. They also lost out Philippe Petrosev and Admon Gilder, who had come in late as a senior, but did tremendous things for Gonzaga. Those 3 guys are out, but they have proved year in and year out they know how to recruit, they create depth, and they've done it again. They've got returning guys like Drew Timme, Joel Ayayi. They've got Corey Kispert, Anton Winston. Those 4 guys are coming back. They've got a hot shot named Jalen Suggs who can shoot the lights out and play some inside ball. So keep your eyes. He's a hot shot freshman along with other hot shot freshmen, Julian Strother. Gonzaga is going to be as deep and talented as they've ever been, but it's up to them to prove if they are the number 1 team or not. If they can get past Kansas, before Christmas, they play Kansas number 6. Next week, they're going to play number 2 Baylor. And then right before Christmas, they're going to play number 5 Iowa. Again, Gonzaga and Coach Few, they've adapted that. You want to call us Cinderella, you want to call us mid-major, go ahead. But we're just a team that's here to compete on any level. So they will play anyone at any time, anywhere.
Definitely.
I think Gonzaga has the nod on this one by virtue of their core that they're bringing back and a strong defensive presence on the ball. I think that's going to be good for them. But my real concern, and let me get a little editorial on you here. I enjoy college sports and college basketball more than anybody. And the NBA proved by pulling a bubble atmosphere, you could do it safely. You got kids in Spokane, Washington. You got kids in Kansas. You're putting them on planes. You're sending them over to Florida. You're asking them to interact. You're hoping that nothing happens between here and there. At what point, it's kind of like when we talk horse racing. Somebody's got to be responsible for the health and safety of the athlete that is a thoroughbred racehorse. Somebody's got to be responsible for the athlete that is the college basketball player. So I'm just hoping the NCAA and all these universities are employing everything they can and doing what needs to be done to protect these young men, because it's not just a matter of protecting them for the health for their team. The last thing you want to see is another shutdown of the NCAA basketball season and no March Madness. Devastating on so many levels, but think about all those kids that didn't get to achieve their dream, knowing that their chances of going to the NBA are still way out there, but maybe we're going to play in March Madness. Maybe we're going to play in the Final Four. Maybe we're going to cut down the net. So I wish nothing but the success for NCAA basketball. I hope this is the right move, letting them continue to start the season and continue it. I hope everybody has their health protocols in place, tracing, tracking, monitoring. There's my editorial on that.
That's great. And I'm glad that you talked about Bill Self and Mark Few kind of texting back and forth about everything good, or, I don't know if you saw this past weekend with Clemson and Florida State, but that game was canceled, and then Dabo Swinney came out and pretty much said they just didn't want to play us. It has nothing to do with it.
I did see.
And it's just, for me, it's like, guys, come on, like, let's be adults here. Let's not do the finger pointing and all that stuff. And to Dabo Swinney, like, chill out. We know no one wants to play you. We know that. You don't need to say it,
Right.
But so it's very opposite, you've got the opposite working here. And for Gonzaga, they're with Mark Few, I think only Mike Krzyzewski is on his level. And I could be off base. There might be some other schools that, were built by one guy, but you look at Bill Self. Kansas was Kansas before Bill Self got there. You look at Roy Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Carolina was North Carolina, but Gonzaga was not, and I know they had that run, and I didn't know that it was before Mark Few got there, but I mean, they very easily could have had that and then gone back to just being that team out in Spokane that maybe we see win a game every 5 or 6 years. But instead, he built that team from, the bottom of, oh, look at that Cinderella, to now we expect Gonzaga to be in the top 5 every year. And the hardest part, I think, is the way they have to schedule. Maybe not so much this year because of the COVID, but in order for them to really kind of be taken seriously, their non-conference schedule has to be 75% Power 5 top half school. Right. And then you do that, you weather the storm. Most of the time they get through, 10-2, 11-1, maybe 9-4. And then you got to kind of bring it down. And you're playing Loyola Marymount. No disrespect to these teams, but they're not the Michigans. They're not the UConns. And you're playing in these gyms that, while they only seat maybe 2,500, it's going to be a rabid atmosphere. And you're going to get 18 conference games where that team, when they play you, that's their championship. They will not have a bigger game all season. So it always blows my mind how Gonzaga can start the first 12 games non-conference playing 12 of the top 30 teams usually. And then big step back with talent, but also these guys are giving you your best show every single day. And then boom, you have to ramp it back up when the NCAA tournament rolls around. I've always felt that that's a bit of a disadvantage for Gonzaga. I was misinformed, or I forgot about their at least national title appearance in that game in 2017. But up until that, I had thought they had never made a Final Four. But for as long as they've been going and at this level, if you take Gonzaga out and you put in, let's just say, Syracuse, if Syracuse had the performance and the records that Gonzaga has had, and then only one Final Four in those 20 years, I'm not discounting it. It's different. Right. So while I do sit here and say for Mark Few, fantastic, because like I said, of all the coaches that are out right now, and maybe Greg Marshall can be thrown in there with Wichita State, but I don't think they're at that level yet. But Duke and Gonzaga, these are the only two schools that really their programs have been built by their current coaches. With all due respect to the Bill Selfs and the Roy Williams, you had the blue collar or the blue bloods before they got there. So that was going down. And once again, just to kind of give Mark Few a little bit of a reprieve that, hey, it is in Gonzaga and it's a little bit less pressure, at least in terms of the tournament side of things. Because there are some years that you look back and go, wow, they lost in the round of 32, or even some of their Sweet 16 losses were, great job. But if you really don't want to be considered that Cinderella anymore, you need to beat the Wichita States. You need to beat the Kansas States. But I will say this is obviously, according to the pundits and the coaches and the Associated Press, this is the best Gonzaga team they've ever had.
And Gonzaga, the other thing that they've done is they have done wonders for the entire West Coast Conference, because you would have never thought back in 98, 99, even 2000, there would have been no preconceived notion that, West Coast Conference, they might be good for sending 2-3 considerations to the March Madness tournament. No way. But because Gonzaga got good, where are these kids from? What conference? And so the kids that thought maybe they were going to get to go to an Illinois, a Florida State, somewhere like that, or even on the way, the UCLAs, the Stanfords, they started looking at that little, Pacific Northwest college and that league. And then pretty soon, St. Mary's is recruiting good. Pepperdine always recruited good. They've had a few off years of late, but St. Mary's is up there right now, and they have challenged. And unfortunately, the USD Toreros were headed in that direction when Coach Holland had the team, and they've just run into some tough luck over the last several years, and they haven't been able to get back on track. They had a good coach a couple of years ago who ran into some legal issues, which just disrupted the whole program, but they've been good. And now it's not uncommon to sit on Selection Sunday, and Gonzaga is going to be in there, and they show the kids from St. Mary's waiting for their call because they're probably going to make it. And then BYU got put into the West Coast Conference for basketball. They're strong. So you've got 3 strong teams, a lot of up-and-comers. They've been great for recruiting and for the league in and of itself. So, it's good basketball. It really is.
I agree. And BYU doesn't move to the West Coast Conference without Gonzaga, or St. Mary's, and also too, from what I've heard, I haven't been on all campuses, but all West Coast Conference campuses are beautiful. I've been on USD. I've been to Malibu. Haven't been on Pepperdine's campus, but it's in Malibu, so I'm sure you can only imagine. So that's a great way to recruit as well. And I'll even take it maybe a step further. Who knows? I think eventually it gets built, or maybe it's a little smaller, but who knows? Maybe Jenny Craig Pavilion here at USD. I talked about the old gym. I mean, it was standing room only with maybe 1,500, 2,000 people, the old gym, with Gonzaga turning that, the West Coast Conference into a household name. That helped everyone out. And then obviously, like you said, St. Mary's has stepped their game up. They're right there in terms of the international recruiting. I mean, they have 2 or 3 Australian players.
They hit Australia real hard.
And it's really one of those, death taxes, and St. Mary's has an Australian center. That's just what you expect every year. And St. Mary's Gonzaga games are really the new, UCLA, Oregon, or that, because the Pac-12's been down. I mean, the state of California, the last 15 years, the best team has been San Diego State, and it's not really been close. And the whole of California and really West Coast basketball is Gonzaga 1, San Diego State 2, which is absolutely nutty if you would have gone back 20 years ago in 98, when all those things are going down, when San Diego State has, maybe 3 wins all year, and Gonzaga is, being a Cinderella team. You don't expect them to continue. I mean, look at George Mason. We have not seen or heard from George Mason since their Final Four run. Florida Gulf Coast, same thing. So to get there and win, fantastic, but continue and built this program pretty much from scratch. Mark Few, he's definitely a Hall of Famer, and on his way. And that's the one thing that has eluded him and hopefully won't. Hopefully he will get to cut down those nets and raise a national championship.
Yeah,
Because
and again, hopefully this year, whoever cuts it, COVID will just stay out of the way, and somebody's going to get to cut down the nets first and
exactly.
foremost. Yeah.
I do worry, we've talked about it. I'm super excited for this week of games and things like that. I do worry if it is forced a bit or if it's a bit rushed, because as I've talked about, March Madness or the NCAA basketball was the main bell cow of all the sports here that didn't get to finish. They didn't get that. So I think they're maybe possibly trying to do this. I'd rather sacrifice Kentucky versus Gonzaga right now. I'm sorry, Kansas versus Gonzaga, then sacrifice that being a Final Four matchup because they weren't able to get through because they rushed it.
Well,
if something happens and you got to start in January, that's fine, guys. That is fine. We will still be here. We are not going to turn you off.
Right. And look at, again, referring to the Illinois calendar, 3 games in 3 days. Well, of course they're excited to play. They're going to want to play. You're not going to keep those kids off the court. But wow, what kind of toll does that take on a body? I don't care how old you are. If you're a starter, that's a lot of minutes, and that, I don't care what you tell me, that breaks down your immune system a little bit because you've got to recover from that. And I don't know where those games are being played, but if you add into that, oh, and by the way, after that last game, we're either going to go back to the hotel, pack, and get on a plane, or we're going right to a plane. So make sure you take a good shower that's going to take before we get on the plane. So, boy, they're asking a lot of these kids, and I just hope it doesn't backfire.
Amen. And once again, always first and foremost, the health and safety of the players and everyone involved. That's the number one goal. Basketball or March Madness will be there. Just make sure everyone stays healthy during that. And we're now, like I said, about 24 hours away from rolling through and trying to do this again, trying to get these games out.
Right.
I just really hope that there's a plan in place, because I do think no matter what, it's going somehow, some way. We've already kind of seen it, but there are going to be things that happen, hiccups along the road, speed bumps, if you will. I just hope the NCAA has a plan for it. And they do the right thing and they don't just fully just shut everything down just the first sign of trouble. Obviously, if it needs to be shut down, then yes, shut it down. But let's try and do some legwork. Hopefully the legwork's been done. I mean, you've had 9 months to get ready for this, so hopefully we're ready. But once again, it is 2020. It's hard to really get ready for anything. So,
and I don't know, you may know this. I didn't have an opportunity to do that much digging. I know Gonzaga, Kansas are going to be playing in Florida. I don't know what the NCAA rule is for attendance there. I know Kansas has already announced to the student body, when we come back and when we start the season, with our first 2 games at home, there are going to be no students allowed in the arena. I believe Gonzaga is employing the same practices. So, and I don't know how the Aztecs are doing. I don't know where they're playing this week and if they're going to allow fans or not. It's going to be interesting sound bites when they're playing, if not, because everybody knows that sound of being in a gym and bouncing a basketball, that echoing sound. So,
yeah. Well, I even brought it up this past week when myself and Brandon Lupia were talking about it. I just wonder, especially at Viejas Arena, I think those seats are red.
Yes.
So do you cover that? It's just a different look because you're kind of used to just kind of a smattering of colors behind there. Even if they're, flipping you off or doing this, you're just kind of used to like just a smorgasbord of colors back there. Maybe if it's a blackout night or whatever, okay, everyone's wearing black, but just to see, I don't know if they cover them. I don't know how they'll do that, but it's going to be very, very different. And
yeah,
I joke about it, but it's the one time UCLA finally decides, yeah, we'll come down and play San Diego State. And they don't even get the show. The show won't be there. Obviously, the student section, which, look, it's fine. I think first things first, let's get the student athletes out there to do their thing, and then the students as well. And I'll be completely honest. College football and the students have not exactly put on a great show for themselves. There've been a lot of very questionable decision making. I go back to Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
Yeah. Look, I know you beat Clemson. Congratulations, but storming, like when I saw them storm the field, even me, somebody that is kind of like, all right, let's chill. We don't need to, go crazy, but just watching that, like, what? Like, this is bad. You guys are now, you're jeopardizing your entire team's season by storming the field. It was absolutely insane, but that's my point. And I've even seen it. You'll see the beginning of LSU or Georgia games and they're spread out. And then before you know it, it's a student section, which
Right.
it is what it is. These students, it's hard because they waited all their lives to go to Georgia and be able to cheer their team on. And this is going down. But like I said, I don't think they've shown a whole lot of restraint, or at least on this college football side of things. So
Right. Now we didn't hit much on point lines and betting and things like this opening week, which we will as the season goes on. But using gaming as the analogy, this health situation with COVID, COVID already has the upper hand. But how do the odds change in the favor of COVID when you start packing up kids, shipping them back east from the Pacific Northwest, make a couple stops, or even if you fly direct, somewhere you get off the plane and you're moving about, and the exposure, the more points of exposure there are, the odds go more so in COVID's favor. So that's what people need to consider, and even on our personal levels, that's what we need to consider. I don't want to get into my, I'll put my soapbox back in the closet, but it's
no,
there.
it's true. Because we really do. We need to hopefully try to get back. I mean, as someone who worked in the service industry my entire life, I'm watching that industry just die. And you can have your frustrations, but it's tough. I don't know if we'll ever get back to normal, but I think we want to. I mean, I'd like to be able to go outside and not go get halfway out to my car and have to turn back because I forgot my mask.
I got my mask.
Yeah, exactly. Or get to the 7-Eleven and have to look, shoot, do I have to go all the way home, or can I like wrap a sweatshirt around my face right now or something? But hopefully we get to that point. But we do at least get a little bit of semblance of normalcy, hopefully, starting tomorrow and going in really the whole weekend.
It will be a good preview weekend. Yeah. One of the games that I like out there, aside from the big ones and the one we spent most of the time on, I like Seton Hall. I always have. And they have, surprisingly, after the season they had last year, I guess they lost a lot of people. I haven't done that much research on them, but they are not even in the top 25 right now. That won't last for long, I don't think, because they just have a good program. They're consistent and all. I think it's just a matter of weeks before you see their name starting to appear in the top 25, and I'm sure they'll break into the top 20 at some point.
Definitely. Final thoughts there, Raider Jim, as we get ready for college basketball. It's here.
Again, I think we've said it with the top 10. We will be with you every week to give you recaps of who did it, who didn't do it, and what needs to be done next for these teams. It's going to be a different look, like every other sport, a different look for the preseason, the pre-conference games, if you will. And the teams are going to be challenged in many, many ways. Let's just hope everybody stays healthy.
Amen. And I'll throw another one out there as we kind of wrap this up. Keep an eye on a very small team out in New York. I don't know what part of New York, but Iona. It has a new head coach, someone you might know, Rick Pitino, making his return to college basketball. Look, the guy can recruit, whether it's fairly or whether, however he goes about it, the guy can recruit. The guy's a basketball mind. Keep an eye on Iona. I don't know too much about them other than the fact that Rick Pitino is there, but generally when you see coaches like that kind of drop down levels, they have a pretty darn good year. You can definitely expect the recruiting to start to pick up for Iona. So just think about that as we get ready for college basketball. And as always, thank you, Raider Jim, for all that you do.
My pleasure.
Definitely. We'll be with you all college basketball season long. And yeah, like we said, as we get deeper into this and we kind of get a more of a feel for what's going on, we will definitely be giving you some betting lines. But myself personally, I don't know where like 90% of these games are even being played. So I'm just going to kind of take a deep breath, enjoy the basketball this weekend. And then, yeah, in the next coming weeks, we'll definitely have some picks for you. So, yes, thank you all so much for listening. Once again, my name is Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the Off the Bench podcast. It's time for y'all to go wash your hands and stop hating, everybody. Enjoy the games. We'll talk to you soon.
Enjoy the games and have a happy Thanksgiving.
And a happy Thanksgiving indeed. Thank you.